One of the more surprising picks in the NBA draft was the Raptors selecting Scottie Barnes with the 4th overall pick. And a lot of people thought it was going to be Jalen Suggs. Even Jonathan Kuminga was a hotter commodity coming out of the draft. And now that they have selected Scottie Barnes, do you think Toronto makes it back into the playoffs with this selection, or do you think it's a wait-and-see process?
No, I think they were going to make the playoffs, regardless if I'm not correct me if I'm wrong, but they get their home games back this year.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, yeah, so they get their home games back. They go home. I think they're fully healthy. They've kind of got their identity back. Scottie Barnes fits that identity, and I think him being the most NBA-ready guy, I think they kind of looked at that pick as like, we want a guy with high upside, but that can also help us from day one. And I think Scottie being so elite defensively, being so versatile, being a playmaker, I think he can come in that lineup of Fred VanVleet, OG, Pascal, Scottie, and whoever the 5 is. It's pretty. Even if they want to play Scottie at the 5, they could run a VanVleet, Trent Jr., OG, Pascal, Scottie lineup, and that's still because Trent plays D2, so that's still a pretty solid defensive lineup. And that's offensively, it's gonna be tricky. That like I always said when Kawhi left, their problem was they didn't have a real go-to scorer
for sure
down the stretch, and they still don't have that. So it's gonna be tricky offensively. But a lot of teams you can make the playoffs being an elite defensive team.
Definitely,
it's just offensively in the playoffs how. But speaking from a regular season standpoint, I think they were going to make the playoffs regardless. I think Scottie just only helps that because he is a playmaker. He can defend all 5 positions very well. And he has guys to learn from. Fred VanVleet, OG, Nick Nurse. So these are some solid guys. So I think this is a good group of guys that he's walking to. It's a good group of situation. And I think Toronto being as one of those respected organizations, guys come to work, and Scottie Barnes coming from Montverde, coming from FSU, he's kind of going to bring in that type of mentality, that type of work ethic. So I think this is going to be good for him, and I think Toronto is a lock to make the playoffs, in my opinion.
I think they are a lock to make the playoffs. I think it's not more so to Scottie Barnes. I think it's more so of them going back home. Scottie Barnes was definitely a solid pickup for them, especially for their identity of their team. They want to be known as a defensive powerhouse, and that's definitely what they can be. I just think that the aspect of them going home, them actually not having to be away all 72, because that was last season, 72 games is definitely going to benefit them. They have one of the best home court advantages. They're the only team in Canada, so obviously that benefits them in that sense. But talking about Scottie Barnes is definitely going to be an impact type player. I just don't know if it's going to be instant impact, given the fact that he needs to grow into his offensive game. If they're going to allow him to play that point forward position right off rip, then maybe they can speed up his development process in that sense. However, I just don't think, given the fact that they have a guy like Fred, they have a guy in Trent that they're going to probably give minutes to. Pascal Siakam's obviously going to be most likely their number 1 scorer on their team. Although I believe if they want to make that next level, Federico has to be that guy that takes that next leap, averages around 21, 23 points, around that for them to really be a strong contender. But I don't believe that personally.
I don't think it'd be Fred. I think it'd be OG, if anything.
Okay, and that's not a bad opinion either, because OG is definitely a versatile scorer. He's got a very good shot to him. It's just the only thing I worry about OG is his consistency, whether the Raptors are going to be willing to give him the ball or not. And now that you don't have a guy in Kyle Lowry there, maybe they want to find someone new in that. But then you don't want to get Scottie Barnes lost in that either, given the fact that you want him to develop into that number 4 overall pick that you drafted him to be. Of course, his primary thing is going to be defense, obviously, but at the same time, you want him to be an offense, have any kind of presence offensively. So I do think that there'll be a playoff lock. I think that Scottie Barnes is going to be a few years in the making for him to be that player that they're looking for, or that they had drafted him to be. But I think going into the next year, it's bigger than Scottie. I think that the home court advantage plays the factor.
There are too many teams in the Eastern Conference called the Toronto Raptors playoff lock. The Brooklyn Nets will be the best team in the league next season if they are healthy. They're not making the playoffs over them. The Milwaukee Bucks, defending champions, they are in the playoffs. The Miami Heat, getting Kyle Lowry, having Bam, Jimmy Butler, they are going to be in the playoffs. 76ers, even if they don't trade Ben Simmons, they will still be in the playoffs. Then you look at Boston with Tatum and Brown, fully healthy, not impacted by COVID, because they were one of the teams that were severely impacted by COVID. Atlanta, even though they will...
Boston's a lock?
Boston's a lock.
absolutely.
Boston's a lock.
You have Tatum and you have Brown, you will be in the playoffs.
They struggled last year.
Atlanta Hawks, even though they will be a first-round exit next year, they'll still make the playoffs, even though they won't make it past the first round, but they'll still be in the playoffs. Right there is 6 teams, so that leaves 2 left. The New York Knicks just got better with Evan Fournier. We were the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference, and Elfrid Payton and Reggie Bullock were starting for our team. R.J. Barrett, third-year leap, is still up and coming. It's going to come next year. You better be ready, because when he takes that third-year leap, he's going to surpass Cam Reddish, and he's going to be on a different galaxy.
He's already better than Cam Reddish.
He's way better than Cam Reddish. It's not even a debate. So the Knicks with Evan Fournier, we needed a shot creator. Evan Fournier brings that. Last 2 years in Orlando, he's been averaging close to 20 points per game and been shooting close to 40% from 3. We needed a guy like that. And then you look at these other teams, Indiana, fully healthy. They're not going to be a cakewalk. Chicago getting DeMar DeRozan, having Zach LaVine, having Vucevic, and Lonzo Ball. They're not going to be a slouch either. So the Raptors, I think, will be in that mix. But it's going to be hard for them to get over these teams because they have made significant moves and have brought in proven players. Chicago brought in DeRozan. He's a proven player, an all-star guy, one of the best Raptors of all time. Indiana brought in a proven coach in Rick Carlisle. All these teams made major moves. When you look at Toronto, they drafted Barnes, but they didn't sign anybody in free agency. They're about to trade Goran Dragic or buy him out. They're not even going to get him from the sign and trade with Lowry. They're going to get Precious, and I think Precious is good, but Precious only averaged 5 points per game last year. He's not by any means proven. Even though he's a good defender, he's not a proven player. Scottie Barnes defensively brings something special to Toronto, the ability to switch 1 through 5. But at FSU, he came off the bench, and that's okay because Leonard Hamilton has his guys come off the bench that first year.
Will came off the bench.
Exactly, Patrick Williams, Devin Vassell. But Scottie Barnes is not a good offensive player right now. He has the tools to be that, but he's a transition fast break scorer at this moment in time. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Jalen Johnson in that aspect, even though he's far more developed than Jalen Johnson, and that's more of a knock on Jalen Johnson being super raw. But Scottie Barnes, he's an okay passer, but he still has to grow into his offensive game. And I don't think that's going to happen his rookie season. I think OG Anunoby has to take that next leap. He has to average 20 points per game because last year, Fred VanVleet was pushing it a little bit. He was shooting too much. He was jockeying at times. He was ball hogging because he had to be that scorer. Siakam, we know he can be the second, third option on the championship team, but when asked to be that first, he struggles being that. And off the bench, Malachi Flynn, are we counting on him? I think he's okay. Gary Trent Jr., I think he's a really good player, but right now he's a spot-up shooter. He's not a guy who can create a shot at a consistent rate. So right now, Toronto has some holes to fill. First of all, they need to fill that center position right now. They need to bring back Kem Birch or sign somebody in free agency to fill that position up. But Toronto's going to be a great defensive team, but in terms of their offense, they might be a bottom 20 offense in the league next season.
The reason why I wouldn't say Boston's a lock is because they struggled last year, and they were in the play-in last year, and I don't think they significantly got better than that last year's team. I think they kind of got worse, losing Fournier, trading Kemba Walker. They just traded Moses Brown. I mean, they got Al Horford. That's good, but they haven't really – they're about to trade Marcus Smart, which I think is going to really –
Are they going to trade Marcus Smart?
Brad Stevens has talked about he wants to trade Marcus Smart, and I think that's really going to put them –
mistake.
That's going to put them in a really bad situation. It's going to be a lot of JB carrying. I think if one guy goes down, it could really be wraps. I wouldn't say Boston's a lock yet, but I think Toronto's definitely going to be in that hunt just because of the fact that, like you said, they're going to be elite defensively. And you guys were a bottom 20 offense, and you were elite defensively, and you got in as a 4th seed. So I think Toronto can do it. I think they can play at that defensive level that you guys did and still be able to, because I think they have a little bit better offensive players than you guys, so I think they can still be in the hunt. But like you said, I can't forget the fact that teams got better. The Bulls, Charlotte, Indiana's coming back healthy. I can't put that aside. But I think Toronto, with the experience, with the continuity that they have, those guys were playing. They won a ring together. They've been playing together for a long time. With Nick Nurse being their coach, I think it's safe for me to say that there'll be a lock for the playoffs.
But that core is gone. Kawhi Leonard left. Norman Powell left. Kyle Lowry left.
Yeah, but
Serge
Van Vliet,
Ibaka left.
Siakam, OG still there.
OG was injured the entire run.
That is very true.
It was just Fred and it was just Siakam.
That is true.
That's the only guys that are left. That entire core has left. Marc Gasol even left. They only have those two guys left. People question the Scottie Barnes pick so much because when Toronto picked Scottie Barnes, people questioned, what does this mean for OG? Mm-hmm. What does this mean for Siakam? Scottie Barnes is a 6'9" point guard. He's not going to be that forward. He can play point forward, but he's going to. They drafted him because they think he can play point guard. And he can play point guard, and that's his natural position. He's getting these comparisons to Giannis, but he's not Giannis. He's a more athletic Kyle Anderson. He's an Andre Iguodala Warriors Iguodala. He's a guy who's going to facilitate the offense. That's why, for me, it's hard for me to kind of put a ceiling on Scottie because he has all the physical tools to be this star player. But from a play style perspective, when you watch him play, he looks very much like an offensive initiator, role player type of guy, getting everybody to their spots, making sure the offense is running smooth. He's not so much thinking about him scoring. He's thinking about the team and how he can run the offense effectively. And maybe that was a knock on FSU because FSU was one of the slowest paced teams in college basketball. And the NBA, when you have the floor more spaced out, when you're not running as many plays or sets, he gets the ability to really be himself and free his offensive game. So maybe we'll see a different Scottie. But for me, I'm not sure if in his first year is going to make enough of a big enough of an impact to put them at the top of the East or even as a playoff team.
No, it's not blind to say they can't be a 6 seed though.
So you think they'd go over Atlanta, Milwaukee, Philly, the Nets, the Bucks?
I think Atlanta. I don't
think he's saying over them. I think those guys are definitely.
No, I'm thinking, but you got to remember, a team can be over a top team, but other things happen. I think Miami's an injury away. You know, Jimmy Butler was out, and they struggled in the beginning. Jimmy had to come back and carry them.
Backpack.
Atlanta was dealing with a lot of injuries, and they still have those same players.
That was more so due to COVID.
What?
Miami.
Oh, but I'm saying it's still, you know what I'm saying, COVID is still here. You know what I'm saying? So it's like.
Good point.
But if COVID is still here.
It's going to impact everyone.
Of course. But if COVID is still here, that means that Toronto might not get that home court advantage.
Agreed.
If the same thing happens next year.
It's going to hurt them. And Florida just got hit with, I forgot.
20,000 cases.
But I'm saying.
right now there's a second wave of the Rona going on.
With Boston, you know, I feel like Boston's a Jaylen Brown injury or JT injury away from completely falling.
I don't know. Jaylen Brown was out that series against the Nets, and they still took a game. Obviously, I don't think that's going to be indicative of their season if one of them goes out. But they still showed the ability to beat a top team with just one of them.
It's going to be tough.
And they got Horford back.
I'm going to wait and see on that.
He was good in OKC.
It's good. It's easy to be. We've seen that it's easy to be good in very bad situations. We just said it. Kelly Olynyk was an 18-point per game gunner out in Houston, so it's easy to be good. And they're probably gonna ask him in Boston to be that guy that has to guard Embiid 4 times a year, Giannis 4 times a year.
If that's his only job, though,
that's a hard job.
It is a tough job. Very true at his age.
He was doing that 2-3 years ago.
True.
Now we're 2-3 years later. So it's tough. Let me backtrack. They're a play-in lock. Let me say that. That's a better way to say it. Toronto is definitely a play-in lock. I don't want to say play.
That's a good statement.
7th and 8th seed, they play for a play. Okay, so Toronto is a play-in lock. I'm gonna say that better. Let me backtrack and say that better. So that's what I think.